Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome to the Game Design Perspective. I am Mau,
I am Santi.
and we are both game designers working on the industry right now. This podcast is all about talking about what's going on behind the scenes in the game industry, or talking about process we follow as designers. Just as a quick intro. Now, quick disclaimer: uh, this podcast only represents our opinions and our views in the industry or gaming as a whole, based on our experience. This does not represent any of the studio's views or anything like that. It's all of what is here is ours.
Yeah, this does not represent neither where we work right at the
No,
moment, nor any studio or team that worked on a game that we're going to discuss here.
exactly. With that out of the way, today we'll be talking about the three C's. Why the three C's are my obsession. And this is a very interesting topic, actually. This is literally the base of game design, actually. Like, this is gonna be so important for you guys who want to get into the gaming industry and want to start a career in game design. And whoever doesn't really care about that, we hope this helps you enjoy your games a little bit more.
I don't think it's actually just for game design, right? Like animators, programmers, like the
Yeah.
three C's. The three C's are like the most. It's one of the most important things and the most important concepts in game development.
For sure, for sure. So, what are the three C's? The three C's are like a character, controls, and camera. This is the base of a character-driven game. Of course, this does not apply in games as chess, right? Uh,
Well, no,
no,
this is exclusive to video games,
yeah, pretty
and
much.
is especially important in real time video games.
Yeah,
Turn-based games will have some aspect of it,
yeah,
but this is very relevant in games that you control any kind of character in real time.
yeah. I mean, a lot of it do apply to turn-based games, but you'll see where that applies, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, like this is literally what you as a player are interacting with the game. So that's what makes it so important.
yep.
And this is pretty much what got me hooked in The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess when it first released, for like 200 hours. 200 hours of just roaming around Hyrule, like running and rolling and jumping and doing nothing. Nothing. I already had 100% file in it, and I just kept playing instead of just restarting the game.
Yeah, my brother was a kid. My brother
I
was a
was
kid when
11.
like yeah, you were 11, and I finished the game with a friend, and he just kept playing and playing and playing,
Right.
and it was kind of like this therapy for you, Mo. That it was.
Yeah, no. Every time. And to be honest, I didn't know what got me so hooked. Like every Zelda game, right? I'm the biggest Zelda fan out there, but Twilight Princess had something in it that I did not understand back then. That I just wanted to play. I didn't care about finishing it again, right? I could have done so, and I've done so a lot of times. But back then, I was just literally walking around Hyrule. And when I became a game designer, that's when I realized it was this. it it was the three C's, right? And the reason I'm telling this story and why I think it's important is because three C's can literally make or break up your game. Not saying that Twilight Princess is a bad game. No, I will never in my life say that. Uh, but just it was just the three C's that made me feel that way, right? And a good three C's can literally make a great game or completely break it. It doesn't matter if your level design is completely amazing. If your three C's are not polished enough, your entire game is not gonna feel great.
No, it really doesn't.
Yeah,
It makes or breaks. It's really rare. Then it depends on the overall design. of a game, but it's really rare that a game with a bad character controller or a bad character feel tends to be like successful. But I'll say, like, I can give you an example really quick. That Baldur's Gate 3, I'm playing it currently, and so you control a character in real time when you're exploring the world, but the requirements of exploring the world in the game is like really it's not really like challenging character controller wise, like 3Cs wise. But they tend to be very simple, and it's okay if this character is not like running in a super smooth animation, or like has like the greatest feel, because it's technically a turn-based CRPG, right? It's a role-playing game which is turn-based. There's no punishment for the player. But there are other players that are like, there are other games that are a little bit more demanding in that sense. It is always a safe bet as a developer to put focus on your character controller on your 3Cs. It's like your 3Cs, it's always a safe bet to put a lot of effort in it. You don't call it done and that's it. Like you might think, and we can analyze it later, but for example, Baldur's Gate 3 will have a very simple character movement, but a very complicated camera system.
Yeah.
For example,
Yeah.
and they put a lot of money on it. So
yeah, there are aspects that sometimes matter more than others, right? But with the intro out of the way, let's start like defining each of them. So let's start with character, right? By character, we're not talking about its visual design, though it is important, and designers like are involved in it, right? We're not explicitly talking about it. We're talking about what the character does, right? How it moves, right? Movement is very different in a lot of different types of game and genres, right? Exactly what you were saying, right? Twilight Prince and Baldur's Gate have completely different movement.
Yeah.
Right? They do not control anything similar, and it's very important to take that into consideration, right? Like how your character is moving and how it feels, right? Also, we are talking about mechanics. Usually they're formally called verbs in the gaming industry. Mechanics are not usually called mechanics. They're verbs, right? So think about Mario, right? What does Mario do? Right? Mario jumps. He jumps. And jumping, like, that's a verb. That's a mechanic. And that's pretty much taken into consideration in the 3Cs, right? How does it feel and all of that. And with that, we're also talking about the metrics of everything, right? Usually, I see this very often where they're like, oh, you know what? They found out how tall this character is. And you know what? He's actually a meter and a half. I was like, and they're like, what? I thought he was taller and blah, blah, blah. Like that, like the character's height is actually a result of the 3Cs, right?
Yeah.
If the character is a meter and a half, it's because he's gonna interact with stuff that is like 2 meters tall, right? All of that needs to be taken into consideration, right? In the stealth games, usually your character is a meter and a half, so that you can hide behind blocks that are 2 meters tall, and when you crouch, you're about a meter, yeah. And you hide behind stuff that is like a meter tall, right?
Yeah.
Those are the metrics.
Yeah, it tends to be. I think the metrics are becoming a more common thing when games, like they have always been important, but it became a more common thing when in modern gaming, when you were able to climb things with a pre-baked animation. When you stop jumping to climb and you actually press a button to climb with an animation, in first-person, third-person shooters. I'm saying this older games like did this as well,
Yeah.
But it became more prevalent in modern gaming, especially during the PlayStation 3 era, during the
Yeah.
2000s.
Uncharted and games like that.
Uncharted, Far Cry 3, they started to become more popular, to have like these pre-baked animations, to have interactions with the world. And this is when metrics started to matter so much, because level designers need to be aware of how tall your character is and how elevation has to work. And they have to keep it constant in their mind so that their levels are traversable at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, and older games, like, yes, of course, not to that extent, but needed to have the metrics very well implemented, and this designers needed to study them very well to build levels, right? Like, think about the very first Mario game, Super Mario Brothers, right? Like, Mario's jump has a very specific metric depending on if you're running, if you're walking, and designers needed to take that metric to see how hard was the jump gonna be, right? Because if Mario jumps 4 meters, right, horizontally, jumps 4 meters. If you make the jump 4 meters, that's a hard jump.
It's too precise,
right? But the metrics also help you gauge the difficulty, right? And that's also part like of the character inside the 3Cs of gaming.
I think. So, do you have a? I think you have an example ready. I don't know if you want to show it yet, but
we'll talk about it. I think we can
okay.
We can talk about it in the end, right? Like as a quick recap, right? And show everything. Or what do you think?
I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea because I think people will probably be listening to this podcast as well sometimes without looking at the video.
Yeah.
So we can focus on having, at the end, we're going to have an example of all this kind of stuff with like extra seasoning.
Exactly.
In one of the best cases ever of an amazing character controller and one of the first great 3D character controllers in history of video games.
Yes, it's going to be very interesting. And don't worry, I have everything on a script. So we're not going to miss what we're talking about right now. I just want you to...
We won't forget.
I just want you to pay attention to this. It's going to be pretty cool. But yeah, so character have metrics, but also the mechanics have metrics, right?
Yes.
Like, it's not only about how tall Solid Snake is. It's also about thinking about the first Metal Gear Solid, right? Like, when he kicks, the kick, like how far is it going to stretch, right? That also has some metrics, right?
Yeah. It was one of the things that we balanced the most in my current project was while we were making melees, we're making a multiplayer melee system in third person, so it's not a normal fighting. And one of the things that we balanced the most, me and QA, was that we were like the distance of your simple attack, of your first initial punch. You know, that distance was so measured. It took like weeks to measure that distance because there's other mechanics that are depending on the distance. Something we wanted to do to put it like a little bit, like pull the curtain a little bit on what I'm doing currently, is like something we wanted to do is that you were able to see a punch coming and dodge out of the way if you were quick enough, or your response, or you were read the attack, right? So for that to work, the distance of the punch had to be long enough and slow enough for players to be able to react to it. And that took such hours and hours of me and QA just playing constantly, you know, just hitting each other and just measuring, and it was like a full table of times on the microseconds. On microseconds, it was like 1.25 or like it was really small. And we were like measuring to that sense, and it's like, okay, we're gonna move it to 1.5, 1.4, 1.3, 1.35, you know, 1.385, you know, so we were moving in chunks like that. So we found like a sweet spot, and it takes a long time, but most of these games do this.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, and I actually, what you're talking about a punch takes me back to Devil May Cry, right? That's why I'm saying, like, we're not quote unquote talking about the visual design of the character,
No.
but Dante has a huge sword. Right? And that's part of the gameplay. And then the designer comes to the concept artist and it's like, he has a huge sword. Okay, right? So we're not explicitly talking about it, but it is very related.
Yeah,
Right?
it can happen the other way around. It has happened to me the other way around,
Yes.
that the visual design of a character gives the designers ideas that is like, wait a second, that's actually looks really cool. Like, for example, a character with big boots, you know, and it's like, hey, that would be really cool. Maybe he has like a special kick or something like that. So it's a conversation between the artist and the designers.
Of course. I mean, I don't know if with Dante that was the way, right? I don't know if the concept artist did it first, but Dante had a huge sword, and that impacts a lot of the gameplay, right? So what you're talking about, it's also like they also had to measure Dante's sword, right? And okay, how much is too much? When is the sword too big, and when is the sword too short in the gameplay? Right? So it's a complicated topic. But
we're gonna get back to this. But for now, just to kind of like solidify it, character is about the visual design and the verbs. What can your character do? That's the two things.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, moving on to the next C, we're talking about controls, and this is a little bit abstract when talking about controls. Yes,
nowadays.
Yes, we mean the controller we're using to play the game. Yes, but we also mean like a little bit more than that, right? First, like, of course, mapping the controls to a controller, right? Your controller layout is super important, right? You don't want to be moving the camera with I don't know, the D-pad and moving the character with the left stick, right? Because that just doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm of course exaggerating just to give an example, but that's just talking about when designers are mapping the controls, right? Also, keyboard and mouse provide a very different feeling and different challenges than designing for a dedicated controller. Some games feel better on keyboard than mouse. Some games feel better on controller, and all of that has a lot to do with it. But by controls, oh, sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I agree. It's not just an easy way to define controls. It's not just like drawing an Xbox controller and assigning the controllers to this. It's also what is the physical action you're going to do to execute this. There is two fighting games, for example. You have a Street Fighter and you have Fight Night, which is a boxing game. They both have the same similar verbs. You punch, you dodge, you block, but the actions of them are completely different. The action you execute in a controller, and you can change the layout. You can allow the players to change the layout, but the physical action you have to do to execute those is where this is the point you design that. For example, Fight Night controls by flicking the sticks to simulate punches, right? Straight punches, crosses, hooks. You use the sticks and it's a completely different action, than punching in a Street Fighter when you press a button and there's a light punch, heavy, a medium punch, and heavy punch, right?
Yeah.
So you have 3 buttons that control the intensity of your punches, right? And then Fight Night doesn't have that at all. Instead, you have flicks of the stick to control if it's a jab, if it's a hook, if it's an uppercut, right? So just think about it. These two games that if you write on paper the verbs, they're extremely similar. Just because of this next point, the controls, they become completely different.
Yeah. And they're completely different games. It's actually a great example.
Yeah, it's just a lot of you have to think when you're designing a game, when you're designing your character controller. It's not just, okay, these are the verbs. I can jump, I can attack, I can roll, I can run. It's not just that. It's just the action is like, oh, how do I run? Do I hold the button or do I click it once, right?
Yeah.
The physical action the player has to take to do these actions matters. This is
Yes.
where you think about.
Yeah, and think about how you lock on to an enemy in Zelda or Devil May Cry, where you have a trigger. I think
Yeah.
Devil May Cry is R1, right? But I mean, yeah, but you hold that button,
You hold
and
it.
if you go to Dark Souls or any Soulsborne, you have to click the right stick. It's completely different, and then you're locked on. You basically changed. You made the decision to change, and all of the other buttons just become your combat, right? And that's
exactly.
just like that's just completely different. Like a very similar action, just designed in a different way for the controller.
That's
Right?
exactly what it
But
is, right?
but also for the controls, we're talking about responsiveness. And by responsiveness, we're not talking about, oh, the moment I press jump or press A, I want the character to jump in that second, because that does not feel like it is responsive. Yes, it is responsive. I mean, a calculator is responsive. If you press
Yeah.
8 on your calculator, the moment you press 8 on your calculator, it's going to show up on the screen. But that just doesn't feel like it is responsive. It doesn't feel like, wow, my calculator is amazing. It's so responsive, man.
There is
Right?
there is actually it's really nice in Japan. There are some calculators and machines, and when you press buttons, they have feedback sounds and feedback things, and it's like ping, boom, boom, and it just
Nice.
they feel so much better. They feel so much better to use because they have those feedback, like those that feedback element, that
Yeah.
feedback effect, and Japan
Yeah.
loves to do that a lot. Their ATMs, for example, their STMs will have like little jingles and little sounds when you press on them, and everything has like a specific sound to
Yeah.
give you feedback that is a responsive machine, even though it's not as responsive as you might think. They're pretty slow.
Exactly. Maybe even like the numbers show up slower than in your actual local ATM,
Yeah,
but it doesn't feel responsive. Like,
it doesn't feel the same.
right?
It's more
That's pretty cool.
satisfying.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, and that's also something we call game feel. We'll talk a lot more about it in a future episode, because game feel is a very vast topic, and you can talk about it all day long, right?
Yeah.
But game feel taps into player expectation, right? Like, if your character is running or sprinting, you want it to feel fast. Yeah, maybe he's running super fast, but if it doesn't feel fast, then
or characters can feel weightless and doesn't feel that nice. Or
exactly.
What is the weight of your character? You want to portray that weight, right?
Exactly. Mario has a lot of that. Like, Mario's jump is amazing, right? And a lot of characters jump, but Mario's jump is just like so
unique.
polished, right? Like, if you take a look at the animations, he always feels super responsive. His jump feels like he has weight to it, and it feels amazing controlling Mario.
Not just jumping, but for example, when Mario Start, a lot of Nintendo games have this, but like they really focus a lot on a sense of inertia, right?
Yeah.
I think this I think the responsiveness and the character controllers and everything is such a vast subject. I think we'll be here 2 or 3 hours just talking about it.
Of course. I just want to say something to like kind of unite these topics of controller and the responsiveness, and is that the controllers have actually tried making all of this game feel since the N64 and PS1, when they added Rumble, right?
Yeah.
It's all about it.
It changed a lot,
Yeah. So that controls are very vast and a little bit abstract, right? Because there's a lot to think about. Then the last C we're going to be talking about, the third one, we're going to be talking about the camera. Camera is super important. Camera determines like almost everything about your game, right?
Yeah.
If it's going to be a platformer, a shooter, a hack and slash, whatever you call it, Like cameras determine everything about the game, or almost everything, right? And there are a lot of types of cameras, but there is no standardized way to talk about them, right? We'll talk a lot more about them in a future episode, right? But like there are no truly standardized ways, right? Like you have a first person camera and a third person camera, but third person camera like has a lot of different variations actually, right?
We've tried to add tags to cameras for the longest time with like third person, first person. We have over the shoulder, we have isometric, we have over the top, we try to give tags to cameras. But one of the things that games don't like to do is to stick to one camera.
No.
Games for the longest time have tried to bring you several types of cameras. If you say there's a game I really like Deus Ex Human Revolution, I really enjoyed it. And one of the first things is like, well, it's a first person immersive thing. Yeah, but it goes third person in several points, when you take cover, when you do takedowns, so it's not 100%. Like the camera system is not defined while you're working on it.
Yeah.
They say like, the moment to moment gameplay is a first person game. But the camera system as a designer, when you're making it, you cannot think that way. Because the cameras will transition from one perspective to the other,
all the time.
Going back to Baldur's Gate has it's so easy to change the camera perspective in that game, right? It's like you're like isometric, and then you can go fully on the top, and then you can go all the way down to make it more like traditional, like an adventure third person camera. So you can say whatever you want that camera is, but the designer has to think beyond the tag. Because the video game cameras need to adapt to such an amount of permutations and such complicated systems that having a camera that is just this camera, it just doesn't work.
No,
not anymore.
Of course not.
Not anymore.
So something that you can try, like you have to be very specific as a designer when talking about the camera, right? And something that you like, if you listener, if you want to get into making video games, you can at least try taking a look at the basics of photography, right? Because that helps you define, at least in your head, how the camera is going to be, right? Where is your character going to be positioned in the screen, right? And all of that, right? So at least take a look at the basics of photography, and so that you're able to define a camera, right? And even if you have a Baldur's Gate kind of camera, right, like all of those cameras, you need to be specific about it. The designer needed to think about all of those cameras, all of the different camera perspective, and be able to define them. Because as a designer, you need to be able to define everything about your game.
One thing, we're going to talk about it a little bit more when we go through the examples, but one of the things we're going to give you in this podcast is the algorithms and what are the ideas I've used, or Mau has used, or we've had other people in the industry use to create their camera systems. And then, so if you're trying to make a game or you want to understand games, we're going to go through a lot of the algorithms and a lot of the ideas that they have in their camera system. To put in perspective, what does Monster Hunter do with their camera, for example, when to manage size? Because it's important. And at the same time, what does a game like The Last of Us do to manage their camera system for indoors? So that's like their goal, right? And then no camera. I don't think we've ever created a perfect camera system. It's sad. It's true. I don't think there's going to be a worst case scenario that designers are like, and it's not
Yeah.
like, trust me, we know this. We know. Trust me,
Yeah.
we know. We when a camera doesn't work in a game, like they know. They know.
Yeah. So like this camera has a lot to do with the scope of a game. So like there's nothing wrong with going with a fixed camera angle, like classic Zelda games or A Link Between Worlds, right? Where there's a fixed camera angle. It's easier for the designer to deal with, and players don't need to take like a specific actions with it, right? So there's nothing wrong with it because there's no perfect camera. There are very, very, very good ones.
Yes, they're very.
But there's
good
no
ones.
perfect one for sure.
So before we proceed, I would like to show something really quick before we talk about why these are so important and everything. I have, for example, I don't need to show it on the screen. This is like a simple thing, but to show how important 3Cs are, I have I have right now open in my other screen a senior gameplay designer, which is my job title currently, actually. My senior gameplay designer for 3Cs exclusively. So everything we've talked in the past half an hour,
Yes.
character, camera, control, like character, control, camera, those three things, this person is going to be for the foreseeable future, for 3-4 years maybe, this person is going to be exclusively working on this. And this is for Remedy Studios. And the reason I pick Remedy Studios is because they tend to have extremely good character controllers and extremely good 3Cs since the original Max Payne. So for a designer, they're talking about, so Remedy doesn't have a game, like has a senior game designer working around the clock on just these three things.
Yeah.
You know, just these three things. And they're asking for someone that has already experience as a gameplay, not a senior, but as a gameplay designer, exclusive on 3Cs, which means that the senior game designer is going to work with other more junior game designers as a team, constantly working on this exclusive detail, on these three little things, you know? And it's not that they're going to be working on weapons, or they're going to work on combat, or they're going to exclusively grab and make sure that the character is working at all times.
Yeah.
Think about it, you know?
The character that the 3Cs feel great.
You know, so this person is like an experienced gameplay designer, you know, that has knowledge of the 3Cs design. You're comfortably guiding the features from concept through prototyping, iteration, phases into players' hands, which means that you're documenting, prototyping, testing, pitching ideas for 3 years just about these three things. This is gonna work to the camera. Like this is how the camera is gonna work, you know? So the complexity behind the curtain for these three things is quite outstanding.
Yeah, you think about it. Like, can you talk a little bit on the job posting about what they're asking for or responsibilities?
So what they're asking is that you have understanding. So for example, one of the things they ask as a character, like a 3Cs senior gameplay designer, is that you have understanding of different areas of production. So you must know game design, animation, cinematics, audio, and VFX. Listen, check this out. How they function and come together to form a cohesive experience, intuitive and exciting second-to-second gameplay. So, and senior gameplay, and this happens to me all the time. I worked on 3Cs in my current project, and one of it's so true. It's
Yeah.
so true. You need to understand animation, VFX, the amount of things that you have to keep in your head. That is like just to make the game feel as best as possible, and also unique at the same time. It's so difficult, and of
that's
course
very impressive.
it's very impressive. This person also is like mentoring other people's work, right? So you need to be able to have the communication skills. So one of the things they say as your task is gonna be that use your communication skills to act as focal point within the team for the features you own, sharing the vision and helping each other realize its potential through feedback systems. They made a typo here. So what are they saying? They're constantly saying, hey, you need to learn also how to communicate all this, which like all this communication,
which doesn't mean you're going to be animating or creating the VFX, but you need to be able to communicate with the animator or the VFX artist to, I don't know, create the gunshot, right? You're not going to be making the VFX of the gunshot, but you need to be able to picture it in your brain and talk about it with it.
That depends on the size of the team.
Of course.
I've touched animations. I've had to go into Unreal, and I had to modify animations, and I had to modify and change the timing of certain things, and then this we discuss it with animators why the changes had to be there. And then especially when you're prototyping something, you might be animating as a 3Cs gameplay designer. Like, of course, you might be animating. So
as a designer, you need to be able to prototype in general.
Exactly, right? So this is like a company that is famous for really good character controllers since the 2000s, really, really good. About to release Alan Wake. Shout outs
excited
to
for that.
Janine.
Excited for that.
Yeah. Shout outs. Like, it's a great team, and I had the pleasure to have friends in that team, and they're like, it's a fantastic team. Like, I really hope, like, I can't wait to play Alan Wake.
But you see like how important the 3Cs are. Like, they drive so much about the game. Right? Of course, not every studio has a 3Cs designer, right? Of course, right? Like,
depends on the size. It's always depending on the size.
On the size, right? Like, indie studios can't afford to have a 3Cs designer, right? Sometimes indie studios share a designer or two for pretty much the entire game, right? But they need to be able to know about the 3Cs.
Yeah, but I think this is where a lot of indies fumble the bag.
Yeah.
There are games that just don't feel right, and the scope of them is huge, without knowing, because a lot of independent games tend to like overscope, thinking that the character controller is done and dusted, and then they realize that it's not, and the game doesn't feel great. And it's a very common thing in especially with 3D indies. This is something that tends to happen.
I was gonna say that, like, 2D indies, they have mastered game feel, right? A lot of 2D indies feel so good to play.
Yes,
right? But 3D is a different beast.
Yes, because I think not to diminish the talent of the indie teams into the indie teams happening nowadays.
Of course not. Right now,
we've been blessed. We've been blessed, absolutely blessed, with an uproar of technology that helps game developers create 2D games significantly easier. When I went to school game design, I had to learn HTML5 and Flash. I had to learn to program Flash, because it was when Unity 3D just came out back then. It was not Unity 4. It wasn't even Unity 4 yet, which, by the way, we're in Unity 5 now. Unreal 4 didn't came out. Unreal 3 was the big thing,
Yeah.
which has a completely different workflow than Unreal 4, and it doesn't have support at all for
No.
2D. Unreal now, Unreal does. Unreal 5, Unreal 4 added that, but now you can make really good games with Unreal, but back then you couldn't. And Unity also didn't have the support for 2D as it has it now.
Yeah.
Back then. So to make a 2D game back when I was studying game design, you had to go through like Flash. I think Game Maker was around, and I think that was one of the best ones. Game Maker was around. You have to go through another one was Microsoft released a library. Actually, my first game ever, which was a Tron Cycle multiplayer game.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. It was like a Tron, like playing Snake. Like
yeah, dude, I was like 15 when you did that.
Yeah,
yes, I remember. Yeah.
That was the first game I ever made. Was in a library called XNA, which is it's an add-on to C#. So you didn't even have an engine. It was just object-oriented programming. It was just programming stuff. So the uproar of development tools for 2D games is shown in the amount of quality to the games that we see nowadays.
Yeah, of course. We're not saying anything about indie games. I am working at an indie studio at the moment, right?
But no, not 2D.
No, 2D, not 2D. No, oh, it would be way easier, right? Like, no, 3D. So I hope you guys see that we have tried so much to make it as good as we can, and think about the 3Cs, right? But no, for sure, like this operating technology, you have no idea how much it has helped the like indie development, and for sure.
Yeah. So
yeah.
This is just an example, just a job post, right?
Yeah.
Of celebrated companies recognizing this term, putting it out there and saying, yeah, we need a team exclusively focused on character controls and camera, and that's the only thing they do.
Yeah, but it does, like, besides that, something very important is that yes, of course, everyone on the team should be aware of this. But talking about design, every designer on the team should be aware of this right now.
Yes.
Like for level design, right?
Yep.
Like working on level design, right? Like it's super important, like a lot of times people are like, oh man, the camera sucks. The camera doesn't work here, right? And sometimes it's not the camera's fault, but it may be the level designer's fault, because cameras have metrics. And as a level designer, you need to know the metrics.
Yeah.
You need to know the camera metrics, the character's metrics, and everything. Because if not, like whenever you get inside a room and you go through a door, which are very hard to design for, right? Like, don't think they're easy. Doors are one of the hardest
doors
things.
Are so hard.
Yeah.
Doors, ladders, and zip lines are the bane of my existence.
Yeah, they're so hard. But like, whenever you get inside a room, right? You know the camera. As a level designer, you know the camera. And then the camera starts getting cramped because you place a collectible in a hallway where the camera didn't fit and you only see the character's head. Then that's the level designer not having a grasp of the 3Cs. Yeah. Or maybe someone up there told him, like, I want that to be like that, and it's gonna stay like that, and the level designer was bummed about it, right?
Leadership.
Yes, right. Like, because to be honest, this has become such a standard that usually that's not gonna happen in level design, right? Like, a lot of people from above can actually say like, no, that's gonna stay like this. And sometimes there's no solution to it. Sometimes there's no really way to know about it. But
that segues exactly at what that segues exactly to what I wanted to tell you.
Yeah,
you say level designers have to adapt to the 3Cs. my experience is that many times the 3Cs have to adapt to the level design. We had to create new mechanics and new systems to adapt to the level design, which is something that happened to me as well when I was
No, for
designing
sure.
camera system. And they were like, hey, level designers are relying a lot of indoors environments, so we need the camera to know that there is an indoor, right? So there's an like expanding and it's taking us a whole new feature when you're designing. So it's a whole new feature that needs to be made and documented and designed and tested and play tested and balanced and the whole shebang.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I think it depends on the occasion, right? Like, of course, right? If like the example you said exactly is for the 3Cs, right? But sometimes as a level designer, you know what you have, you know what you can do, and you still added that in the level, right?
Yeah, okay.
The three, like, camera issues, for example, sometimes, not always, but sometimes they're from the 3Cs, or sometimes they're from the level designer, right? Sometimes there's no way to solve it, and it just needs to stay that way, because not every problem has a solution, or were able to find a best solution, and they did what they could, right? Sometimes it's just not as straightforward as you might think, right? But yeah, in an ideal world, as a level designer, you need to be aware of where your 3Cs are, and you're planning your level according to the 3Cs, right? And you're not destroying the camera in the process, or adding jumps to metrics that don't actually match, right? Like, if your character jumps, and this is very basic, right? If your character jumps 4 meters and you added a 5-meter tall block, of course you're not going to be able to, right? That's very basic, but that's just that's just the gist of it. So every designer should be aware of this whenever they're designing their systems, their level, their so on and so forth, right?
So with this, why are you obsessed with them?
Why am I obsessed with them? Okay, how about we take a look at an example?
Ooh,
how's that look?
Ta-da.
Oh, look at that. All right.
So for people listening, we're playing. We brought out Zelda: Ocarina of Time. This is a great example for a character controller, because it was one of the first ones that, like, it wasn't the first third-person character controller in a 3D space, but it was one of the first really successful ones.
Yeah. No, for sure. And it took into consideration so many things. It came out in 1998, and creating a character controller like this nowadays, that would still be like AAA. Like,
yeah, it would still feel AAA. Yeah.
So the character, right? Like, the character movement. If you see Link, right? Link has several, like, 2 main speeds at which Link accelerates, right? The first one is walking, and the more you push the stick, he walks a little bit faster, but eventually he goes into running speed, right? And that's movement.
What they do there is they grab the walking animation and the running animation, and they blend them until a threshold. So when you touch a stick, guys probably know this, but when you touch a stick, it's from 0 to 1 with all the decimals, right? It's a float. It's called a float number. So what they're doing is, depending on that float number, up until a threshold, they're blending from a walking animation all the way, as they speed up, into a running animation. Now, can you show us like something interesting? So let's go through our list and start seeing what they did. What they did with the camera here.
Okay. Let's see. Camera. this is amazing. You see, the camera is already working. The camera is already doing its thing. So the selection of time is very, very interesting because it doesn't require a second stick at all. Never, right? The N64 didn't have one,
Yeah.
right? But the camera is so smart that it's always trying to position behind Link, right? With a small delay so that you don't get very weird results, right? But it's always trying to position behind Link, and that's why Link is creating a circle with it, right? And no matter what you do, the camera has several ways to react, right? Also, if you see this, you can see the camera has collision, so that's part of the metrics that we were talking about. But yeah,
so what happens if you rotate the camera? So go back to the previous room, go to a corner, face opposite to a corner, and then pull the camera. So now face outside, away from the corner. I want to see how they solve this. No, the opposite way. Look the other way. There. Now put the camera behind. So how does this solve this, right? So
yeah,
what they did here, if you move the camera to another position now, like if you rotate the camera,
I can't. I need to move Link.
Yeah, but if you rotate the camera a little bit, what they do is that they actually move Link forward a little bit when that happened.
Yep.
They actually move the character slightly forward, you know?
Yeah.
So that the camera, so that Link doesn't go inside the camera.
Yeah.
Right? This is an older game, so they didn't have transparency as we have nowadays. But when this happens now in a modern game, they would usually they would actually don't render the character so you can still look around, or make it somewhat transparent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's nowadays, but back then that was a very smart way to solve it.
They didn't have that, right? But there is like another thing that is like the camera system there. Can you do that again, for example?
Look at this. Look at this. Whenever I go to a ledge, look at what the camera is doing.
Yeah, that was really clever.
That was really clever, right? Like showing you where you're gonna land if you jump.
So let's go in order, Mau. Let's go and see like maybe you can jump down and then you can see like, okay, character. Character.
Yeah.
Right. So what are the verbs here?
Yeah, Link, I mean, right? going a little bit back to movement. Sorry about it. You'll see that Link, for example, when he's moving, like whenever he rotates, he's actually tilting a little bit, right? Oh my god! Oh my god!
Go to a safe area.
No! Wait! There you go.
For people listening, like he's struggling with an enemy right now.
Yeah, no worries.
Another one.
Sorry about it. Okay, cool. Right? Like, so here, right? Like all of the metrics, what we're going to be talking about, the metrics, how tall is Link? Link is probably like 1.5 meters. I don't have the exact measurement. Link is probably 1.5 meters. And those bushes are probably something like
1 meter.
1 meter or less, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you, like, if you take a look at all the metrics, like Link head sticks a little bit out, and if you take a look at blocks, I don't have a block nearby. Oh, this mountain is.
So what I think it is that Link is 1.5 meters. The bushes are 75 centimeters.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And Link is 1 meter while prone.
Yeah, Link should be about 1 meter, and those should be about 75, right? Regarding metrics, blocks are very interesting if you take a look at them, right? But yeah, like your mechanics are very straightforward, right?
Go to an open area so we can move Link more freely. I don't know why you came to this. Like he went into a labyrinth.
Oh yeah, wait, sorry. Yeah, let's do so. Yeah, let me go to Lake Hylia. Yeah. So, of course, the verbs the verbs, Link's verbs, right? Like
So
he
let's go through
runs,
that, right?
rolls.
So
Yeah.
let's go through movement, let's go through the verbs, and let's go through the
Yep.
metrics in order. In this case,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So
So if we can walk.
yeah. Sorry, my dog is moving my microphone. That. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, there's the verbs running, rolling.
So we
Right?
have rolling, running, attacking,
Yep.
and then
Right.
here's like
So sorry about that. My dog it was literally came and started moving the microphone and the setup, and she wants to play, and she already played before this, right?
so we have like running, for example, we have walking, we have attacking, you
Yeah.
know? We have attacking,
Shielding.
we have blocking, right? We have shielding or blocking. And then one thing that we have is that we have use. And they define this use as what item is equipped.
Yeah.
So this is a way that you can define a verb in your game without having to define every single mechanic. Is not usually what we would do is that, like, what would happen here is that you won't, when you have a game with a lot of items, for example, you won't define every item. The same way you do when you can say shoot and don't define every weapon.
No.
Or slash and not define every single weapon.
Exactly. You have two different swords, right? Here, they're not defined. They're not defined the same way. Or you can shoot the hook shot or the bow, right?
Exactly,
and they're not
right?
the same way, right?
So something that here in Zelda they did is that the verb they probably use is use. So they have walk, run, roll, attack,
yeah,
and use, so the amount of verbs is actually surprisingly simple. What else can he do? He can jump, he can climb, he jump. How does Link jump, right? Like, but they do it, okay, so jumps automatically, which is already different. Like, we'll talk about this in Control, right?
Yeah.
So and then so those are like the simple verbs, right, that Zelda does, and then they have the focus. So you have focus.
Yeah. Now take a look at this, going a little bit behind to the metrics. This part is super interesting, right? Because
it's the next point.
depending on the metrics, you see how Link climbs. Now if you go a little bit here, he still jumps a little bit and does the same animation, right? If you go here, the metric changed enough to Link climb a different way.
And those are pre-baked animations.
Yeah, and being actually on the ledge, right? And the metric sometimes stretches a lot, you see. But I think I'm on the threshold of the metric. If I go here, Link can't jump anymore. So, right? So say that, like, if Link is like 1.5 meters, that is like almost 3 meters. So Link stops grabbing the ledge at 3 meters, roughly.
Probably 3 meters. Yeah.
You see? And it's very important to define at the threshold of both animations, right?
Yep.
And that's just one metric. Imagine the entire game.
Yeah.
The entirety of the metrics in the game. Right.
So that's the thing, right? Like, maybe we don't need to do this, but this tells you like how they actually planned Link's character controller from the beginning.
Yeah.
By defining in one word, one action, right? So he can use items, he can climb, he can run, he can roll, he can attack, he can focus, he can push. It like it can pick up. You can pick up bushes, for example. It can pick up,
and then you can change literally how Link moves.
And then those verbs overlap in their function, because, for example, in the case of pick up, if you can pick up a bush, or you can pick up a bomb, or you can pick up a rock, right? So your verbs, your verbs become something that is relatively flexible, but it's a great guideline to direct your character controller.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about metrics, how metrics are essential for characters' interactions, and how these all are previously planned.
Yep. Let's move on.
What Mau showed, like in the game, but for example, in the case of Zelda, you like, for example, 3 meters is the threshold, which means that you cannot make pushing blocks larger than 3 meters by 3 meters.
No, exactly. And that's very interesting. Usually in the game you can't, until you reach the spirit temple, and they allow you to move. I think it should be like 5 meters, but that's because they're giving you an ability to do so, right? They're giving you the silver gauntlets, which allow you to do so, but they're explicitly telling you you can move these blocks that have this mark.
But what I mean,
because you have this.
But what I mean is in regards of climbing, right? So Mau was showcasing, for people listening, Mau was showcasing how Link can climb in Zelda Ocarina of Time in different heights, and there's a specific metrics for a very specific animation. You can try it at home if you have access to a game, or there's 1,000 games, and I'm pretty sure you've seen this before. But these metrics are planned beforehand. Why are they so planned and not flexible? Because a lot of the level design and the puzzle design is going to be dependent on these metrics.
On this puzzle.
What does it mean?
Yeah.
What does this mean? The size of a wooden box or a rock block, or these kind of objects that you can push, move around to solve puzzles, needs to be in a specific size so that Link can always climb them, or they can always execute their function. So metrics are very, very rigid, very planned, very designed. Now, in the case of controls, there are games, for example, in this case, Mau is running right now with Link, right? But in this case, the action of running, in other games, they have running as well, right? But in some games, the action the player has to take is that they have to hold a button to run, not just the stick. While in Zelda Ocarina of Time, you just move the stick to run at max speed.
That's true.
So Nintendo, while making a game, or any developer while making a game, they say, okay, what are our controls? We have our verbs, we have our actions. What are our controls? They're gonna make a layout that is like what they think ideally it should be, but give the player the chance to change them. But the things that things that don't change are the physical action that the player has to execute to perform whatever verb they want to perform.
Yeah.
For example, you block by holding a button. So it's not just like these button blocks. These button blocks you need to hold. The same with focus, right? The verb focus in this game, which you brings the lock on, you need to hold, while in other games, you just tap it and it locks onto something. Example, Dark Souls or most Souls games, right? So they're doing the same thing if you think about it. In Zelda Ocarina of Time, you're having a lock on similar to Dark Souls, similar to Dark Souls, but the physical action the player has to do is not the same one.
No.
So this is coming back to controls, right? And then camera. We talked a little bit about it.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it. But if you think about it, we were also saying that some games have different cameras, right? Baldur's Gate. I mean, it's not the exact same extent, but there's actually a story that Ocarina of Time started production as an first person, right? And then eventually they moved it to third person. But I mean, you kind of still use the first person, right? To aim, right? They kind of found a way to aim. I'm sorry about this. Juna just went nuts. Sorry for everyone who's listening. Juna is my dog, and she wanted to bite my microphone. She's about to turn. Oh, she turns 3 months today, actually. Oh. So that's why she's going crazy. Sorry about it. She literally took a walk before this.
So now Zelda Ocarina of Time has this system that allows you to go from first person to third person, right?
Yeah, no, and that, you know what's something very interesting? I don't they didn't pull it out entirely, but they were actually trying to make an over the shoulder. If you see
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
right?
They
Like,
try making it
I
over the
think
shoulder.
speedrunners use that, to be honest, but they were trying to. So that's how much they were paying attention to the game. You know, like you see, like I'm still using the hook shot, and I can still use it. There's no real way to aim, right? It's very hard to do so, but it's there, and they were actually thinking about it. They were actually thinking about so many camera systems just to make this game work.
Yeah. No, that's a real thing, right? Like that's exactly it. So that tells you, you know, a little bit what is like so when you're designing your game, I don't know if you mind, Mao, if I share my screen a little bit.
Go ahead, say goodbye to Link.
Bye, Link. So for everybody that is just listening, I will narrate everything. But if you're watching and you want to see, this is kind of something that I might do as well from time to time. That is, I am going to share something of a whiteboard style thing.
That's going to be very interesting, guys.
Right? So we have something of a whiteboard here, right? So if we divide this in three, you know, like a whiteboard, and so now we have character, you know, and we have control, and we have camera, right? Right. So now that we have this, we have defined, really simple. We have defined character can be visuals and verbs. Is it not? You know?
Yeah.
And the verbs kind of give you the function, you know, gives you like the function of what it does, right? Then controls is kind of like a layout.
Something pretty cool about verbs. Whoever plays turn-based RPGs, right? Turn-based games, right?
Yes.
We remember that at the beginning we said there's somewhat there. Yes, you literally have a list of verbs. Fire is a verb. Firaga is a verb. Okay.
Magic, attack, defend,
exactly.
Item, you know. They're not necessarily verbs. They're not necessarily verbs, but they're like, well, they can be verbs if you add the word to before it, to item, you know. But but you're pushing the English language at that point. But you have this now you have this as like this thing in the case of like RPGs, turn-based RPGs. Japanese RPGs put it like straight up on your face, like attack, defend, magic, item, you know. And it's like, what can you do? What can you do in this fight, you know?
And some classes or jobs have their own verb.
And so we have the verb which dictates, these verbs dictate the function, right? Dictate the function of your character, right? What can they do? You know, they can run, they can jump, they can use, you know, for these are examples, right? The layout in this case, the layout is like is when you're testing a game, you need a layout, right? You might not have the system. A lot of the things is that you have to come up with like the system that is the best to play test the game, not ideal layout for the gamer themselves. You know, so because the technology or the systems to make like adapt just in runtime while the game is running, they like your like the controllers might not be there. So a designer needs to have a layout, like a default layout designed no matter what, even if you have the option Like the player has
bind
the option
controllers.
for two reasons. Okay, even if you can allow the player to bind their own controls, the first time experience is so important that you want to put effort in creating the best layout possible, even though
For sure.
you cannot like be considerate of every single human being that plays your game. But you have to try, especially for play testing the game in closed doors, right? So
Dude, and so much so that it has almost become a standard that you jump with the A button. Right? Like that.
So
you jump. I mean, if we have very different controllers, right? But you jump with the X or A button on the Xbox controller like it has almost become an industry standard because players have attached themselves so much to that button jumping that if you move it to the square or X button or the left button, it's just gonna feel like, hey, weird, and players gonna want to bind that.
So in this case, I draw a horrible controller, so I'm gonna draw it better for people listening.
Please do so.
I did a horrible job drawing a controller. I know. I swear I know how to draw, but if we make a controller really quick.
No, and that's also the reason why we've settled on a lot of things, right? The confirm button, right?
Exactly, right.
Everything. It's just because of first time experience. I mean, players can adapt to a new confirm button, but they're gonna be mad about it. They're not gonna love it.
But for example, so we have a controller here.
You're missing a button.
Run, you have
there you go.
Jump, and you have use, right?
Yeah.
So you assign it as best as possible to a layout, and again, even if the player can bind, and I love making my own controllers, and there's many times that the default controller, while I was working on a game, I did not agree with, and I could not wait for this system to be implemented so that I could change it, but you need to still try, because you need to play test your game before this system is implemented. Like you need to play test your work, so you need to kind of hard code at some point, like a controller, right? But that's not it, right? You have the physical, the actual actions the player has to execute like to do the verbs, hold, flick, tap really quickly. Right? Those are the actions. So it's not just the layout, it's also the actions the player has to do. And then there comes the camera, which is like a collision system.
Yeah.
Sorry if I write it wrong. So
no,
you have like
double L.
Eh?
I think you're good with double L.
Yes. So you have a collision, right? You need to have a collision. For example, The Last of Us has a collision system that is predictive. They sometimes predict when a collision is coming and they adapt slowly towards it. It's really interesting. So when you're playing, if you want to test a camera system that is very, very advanced, go to The Last of Us, step in a corner and start moving the camera around, and you're gonna see that before the camera touches the wall, it's gonna start moving towards the character. It's really creative. It's really impressive. And the thing is, like, the best cameras are the ones you don't notice. So this work
they're invisible.
This work goes a little bit unappreciated, right? So you have a collision, and then you have like a gameplay system of the camera, right? This gameplay system, I'm going to write system here, is also an adaptive camera that changes depending on the gameplay requirements. For example, we were playing Ocarina of Time, right? And Ocarina of Time will have like a first-person camera, a third-person camera, a focus lock-on camera, and the
Yeah,
camera will change positions. This system is different than just the regular collision system. They need to work together, but it's a different aspect of this camera system.
totally true.
Yeah. So these cameras, so you need to change the position of the camera to ideally show the best possible action.
Yeah,
Games tend to have an incredibly complex camera systems in which they surround the character in bubbles that adapt the rotation of the camera as best as possible. That depends on the requirements of your system. For example, one of the systems I did is that the camera had different behaviors. What does that mean? If I would detect if a character was indoors, outdoors, inside an object, fighting, and then the camera would change a profile and would change the default position of it, and would move closer, farther under its default to kind of mitigate as much like harsh collisions on the camera. That's an example, just a simple example, right? So with this, you get visuals, verbs, layout, actions, collision, gameplay system. 6 objects divided in 3 categories that you need to define if you're making a game.
yeah,
Boom. Character equals visuals plus verbs. Control equals layout plus actions. Camera equals collision plus gameplay systems. Booyah, you can go forward and start first analyzing or thinking of what you would like to do in a game. But this is something we do on a normal basis.
yeah. And with that, like, to answer why are they my obsession? Well, because every design branch should know about it, because it can make or break up a game. Because if you have this defined on your document, your game pitch is more than halfway done, right? Like, you already defined probably the most complex aspects of your game.
Yeah.
Right. So, yes, they are my obsession because of that. And all the time, whenever I'm designing or whenever I'm trying to come up with a new game, I need to think about this, like, all the time. This is the base of our jobs.
Yeah. Everything converges into this.
Yes. And maybe if you have a Twilight Princess at your place, like, a game you love just to run around, maybe these are your obsession as well. Maybe if you love just playing as Mario and jumping, maybe this is your obsession as well.
Yeah, that's a good one. For that, on the comments, tell us what's your favorite character, like 3Cs, which game you really like. For example, another example for me would be Infamous. I really like that character controller, and I really like Sucker Punch character controllers. They're really fun to play with. So tell us in the comments, what is your favorite 3Cs in a game? It can be a shooter, by the way. Like, shooters are super complicated.
Yeah, it can be pretty much like almost any genre. So just tell us, like, which ones you like and try analyzing them with whatever we said, and hope that makes sense, right? If you have any question, also please tell us. And I don't know, maybe that question will spawn up in completely new episode about 3Cs.
Yeah. Of course. I hope this also, I hope this helps you, if you're in the game industry or not. This helps you communicate your ideas and communicate your feedback to developers, that, like, to communicate better, like, with developers as well,
Yeah.
to tell them what exactly you didn't like, which is one of the reasons why we want this podcast as well, is because we want to hear from you. and we're trying to extract information from you guys to make better games.
Yeah. No, feedback makes every game better, right? A game without feedback is a game not designed for you guys.
Yep. That's, oh my God, that's so pretty. A game without feedback is a game that was not designed for you guys.
Guys, please make
It-
that quote popular, make it famous, add my name. I want to be famous. Guys, I wanna, like,
yeah,
every
that's
quote
so
Satoru Iwata said, like, add me below that.
yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. A game without a game without feedback is a game designed for one person. So
Yeah, it's not a game designed for the user, for the player.
Yeah.
Right? So feedback is always appreciated, and
That was
the
a good
more
one.
you know, the better the feedback you'll be giving.
Because knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe.
Again, so sorry if Yuna was distracting you while I was playing Zelda Ocarina of Time. Remember, she's a 3-month-old husky puppy. Huskies are not a quiet breed, and she's 3 months old. 3 months old, so she's very energetic. So sorry about that.
Again, also, if you're just listening, let us know if there was something you didn't understand. Let us know something in the comments. We'll answer comments as best as to our ability.
Yeah.
Or if there is something you don't agree. Video game designers tend to like to argue a lot. So if you didn't agree with us on anything, let us know. All right.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, everyone, guys. Thank you so much. You do it.
Yeah, no problem. I'm Santi.
I'm Mau, and this is Yuna.
And this is the Game Design Perspective. I hope you had a good time. Please comment, like, subscribe, and see you here next week.
See you next week, guys.